Okay, so we're moving toward the end of the Buddha's life, and this next reading is from well, it comes up in, it's the same text, but it comes up in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta from Digha Nikaya, from the Udana, as well as from the Vinaya, the Mahavagga. And while the Blessed One was living there at Nalanda, in the Pavarika mango grove, he often gave this talk on the Dhamma to the bhikkhus. Such is virtue, such is concentration, such is understanding. Concentration fortified with virtue brings great benefits and great fruits. Understanding fortified with concentration brings great benefits and great fruits. The heart fortified with understanding becomes completely liberated from the taints, from the taint of sensual desire, the taint of being, the taint of views, and the taint of ignorance. So that basically what the Buddha is going around this last period of his life. He's probably got a good feeling already that his life is winding down, although he hasn't made that declaration yet, and going to different communities and just reiterating the foundation, the basis of his teaching and his training. And basically what that also that like virtue, concentration, understanding, those are the practices that are aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path, and that's also in the Bhikkhu Upasampada, the Bhikkhu ordination ceremony. That's part of the, not exactly word for word like this, but fundamentally that is part of the ordination at the very end. That is a kind of a wrap up that I do at the end of the ordination as the preceptor. When the Blessed One had lived at Nalanda as long as he chose, he said to the Venerable Ananda, "Come, Ananda, let us go to Pataligama." "Even so, Lord," the Venerable Ananda replied. Then the Blessed One journeyed to Pataligama with a large community of bhikkhus. The followers at Pataligama heard, "It seems the Blessed One has arrived at Pataligama." Then they went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, they sat down at one side. When they had done so, they said, "Let the Blessed One accept a rest house." The Blessed One consented in silence. Seeing that he consented, they rose from their seats, and after paying homage to him, keeping him on their right, they went to the rest house. They completely spread it with coverings, and they prepared seats and put out a big water trough and hung up an oil lamp. Then they told the Blessed One what they had done, adding, "Now it is time, Lord, for the Blessed One to do as he thinks fit." Then the Blessed One dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, he went to the rest house. After washing his feet, he entered it and sat down by the central pillar facing the east. And the bhikkhus of the Sangha, after washing their feet, entered the rest house and sat down by the western wall facing the east with the Blessed One before them. And the followers from Pataligama, after washing their feet, entered the rest house and sat down by the eastern wall facing the west with the Blessed One before them. Then the Blessed One addressed the followers from Pataligama thus: "Householders, the unvirtuous man incurs these 5 dangers through failing in virtue." What 5? Here the unvirtuous man who fails in virtue suffers a great loss of wealth through negligence. Secondly, he acquires a bad name. Thirdly, whatever assembly he goes into, whether of warrior nobles or Brahmins or householders or monks, he lacks assurance and wants confidence. Fourthly, he dies confused. Fifthly, on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in a state of privation, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell. But the virtuous man acquires these 5 benefits through perfection of virtue. What 5? Here the virtuous man who has perfected virtue attains great wealth through diligence. Secondly, he acquires a good name. Thirdly, whatever assembly he goes into, whether of warrior nobles or Brahmins or householders or monks, he has assurance and does not want confidence. Fourthly, he dies unconfused. Fifthly, on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in a happy destination, even in a heavenly world. Then, when the Blessed One had instructed, urged, roused, and encouraged the followers from Pataligama for much of the night, he dismissed them, saying, "Householders, the night is far spent. Now it is time for you to do as you think fit." "Even so, Lord," they replied, and getting up from their seats, they paid homage to the Blessed One and departed, keeping him on their right. Soon after they had gone, the Blessed One went to an empty room. And just a couple things. I mean, this, like in Thailand, most of the halls are built in this same fashion of and that's what this one is actually as well. With the Buddha, his back to the east, he's not in the middle, but say Wat Pah Pong is certainly like that, where say the Sangha is there and teaching, and they're facing the east, the lay people facing the west, and that's the orientation that I say, going way back to the time of the Buddha. And also just those 5 benefits and the 5 dangers of virtue. I mean, it seems ordinary, but especially in terms of the world, that sense of being able to, the virtue establishes a stability in a person's life. They acquire both a material stability, a certain stability of relationships within their community as a good name, that sense of confidence, and to be able to die unconfused is not a small thing. So that those are, on a certain level, especially in terms of how the world functions, and in the same way that, like, one of the characteristics of the human realm is, like one of the basic definitions of a human being is that they're 5 precepts is a basic foundation, and there are, in the teachings it talks about you can have like a human form, but not really achieve a human destiny or destiny. Manusia and Ajahn Buddhadasa, I remember him drawing attention to it is that the word for a human being is manusia, and that is yes, one with an elevated heart, mano. The root is the heart, so that sense of an elevated. So the 5 precepts lay that foundation. At that time, Sunida and Vasakara, Magadha ministers, were having a city built at Pataligama in order to keep the Vajjayans at bay. That's right on the Ganges, so that would probably be a boundary of a state, and so that just a natural barrier. Hosts of deities were then haunting the fields there by the thousands. Now mighty deities sway the minds of mighty kings and ministers to build cities in places haunted by them. Mediocre deities sway the minds of mediocre kings and ministers to build cities in places haunted by them. Minor deities sway the minds of minor kings and ministers to build cities in places haunted by them. With the divine eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, the Blessed One saw those deities. Then, when the night was near dawn, the Blessed One rose, and he asked the Venerable Ananda, Ananda, who is having a city built at Pataligama? Sunida and Vasakara are having it done, Lord. They are doing it as though they had been counseled by the gods in the heaven of the 33, the Blessed One said, and he told what he had seen. He added, of all the resorts of noble ones and of all trading centers, Pataliputta will be the greatest of such cities as that place where the treasure bags are unsealed. It risks 3 dangers, from fire, water, and dissension. So Pataligama, or Pataliputta, is now Patna, but it later became like this in Magadha. Then that was Ajatasutta and then his descendants. But then Ashoka is the Pataliputta was the center of the empire of King Ashoka. So it became a huge center of Indian empire and culture. Of all the resorts of noble ones and of all trading centers, Pataliputta will be the greatest of such cities as the place where the treasure bags are unsealed. It risks 3 dangers, from fire, water, and dissension. Then Sunida and Vasakara went to the Blessed One and invited him for the following day's meal. After the meal was over, when the Blessed One had eaten and no longer had the bowl in his hand, they took lower seats and sat down at one side. Then the Blessed One gave the blessing with these stanzas. Where a wise man makes his abode, there let him feed the virtuous, who live the good life self-controlled, and offer to the local gods this honor and respect for them. They will return to him in kind, because their love for him is like a mother's love for her own child. And when a man is loved by gods, he always sees auspicious things. Then the Blessed One rose from his seat and went away. But on that occasion, Sunida and Vasakara followed behind the Blessed One, thinking, the gate by which the Blessed One leaves shall be called the Gotama Gate. The ford by which he crosses the Ganges shall be called the Gotama Ford. And the gate by which the Blessed One left was called the Gotama Gate. But when the Blessed One came to the river Ganges, it was full and so brimming that crows could drink from it. Some people wanting to go to the further bank were looking for boats, others were looking for floats, and others were lashing rafts together. Then, as quickly as a strong man might extend his flexed arm or flex his extended arm, The Blessed One vanished with a sangha of bhikkhus on the near bank of the Ganges and stood on the further bank. He saw the people who wanted to get across, looking for boats, looking for floats, and lashing rafts together. Knowing the meaning of this, he then uttered this exclamation: while those who had crossed the flooded stream are bridge building, avoiding deeps, while people lash their rafts together, the wise already are across. And the next quote is from Mahaparinibbana Sutta, Diga 6, as well as the Mahavagga from the Vinaya. Then the Blessed One said to the Venerable Ananda, "Come, Ananda, let us go to Kotigama." "Even so, Lord," the Venerable Ananda replied. Then the Blessed One journeyed to Kotigama with a large community of bhikkhus. There the Blessed One stayed in Kotigama, and there he addressed the bhikkhus thus: "Bhikkhus, it is through not discovering, not penetrating four truths that both you and I have had to travel and trudge through this long round. What for? They are the noble truth of suffering, the noble truth of the origin of suffering, the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, and the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. But when these four noble truths are discovered and penetrated, craving for being is cut off, craving that leads to being is abolished, and there is no renewal of being." And while the Blessed One was living there at Kodigama, he often gave this talk on the Dhamma to the bhikkhus. Such is virtue, such is concentration, such is understanding. Concentration fortified with virtue brings great benefits and great fruits. Understanding fortified with concentration brings great benefits and great fruits. The heart fortified with understanding becomes completely liberated from taints, from the taint of sensual desire, the taint of being, the taint of views, and the taint of ignorance. Any questions, comments as we're going along? Yeah. It's wonderful. You're wonderfully westernized and anglicized even. It's poor you. No, I mean that's it is a pretty basic standard to be both. Yeah, I mean it's one of the things of like when you there's one of, like as a forest monk, when you go on Tudong and when you set up your gloat in the forest, that's the first thing you do is dedicate your practice. You ask for permission. You spread loving kindness. You ask for the blessing of the various deities that are around, and similarly in when you're living in places, then you forest monasteries, then you are dedicating merit and sharing blessings with the beings that are there, so that you are uh, establishing a good working relationship with the beings that are already there. So it's that is a in terms of the forest tradition, that's kind of basic practice. So it's not some kind of exotic thing or some curiosity that they do from time to time, but that's really standard kind of practice and something that you're encouraged to be doing when you're, especially when you're living in forests and living in or wherever you're going really. But in Thailand there's a very easy relationship or an assumed relationship with other levels of being. It's just like every house, or even if it's every house has when they build a house, they put a spirit house up where if they have displaced any particular spirits that are around, they put a nice little shrine there, and then they bring offerings to it. And that goes, in the middle of Bangkok. Every big high-rise building will have it'll have a shrine usually up on the roof, for that, and depending on the different places, and then there will be different shrines set up for these various deities or ghosts that are around, whether they are benevolent or whether they're like fairly recently Ajahn built a substantial jetty and enlisted many of the senior monks to come and help generate blessings, because the area where he had established the monastery is a place where there had been a lot of, just a generation before, maybe two, very large, a lot of people died in combat, and a lot of strife in the area, a lot of violence, a lot of shelling. Yeah. There's still places around there that a lot of artillery emplacements, and because that was one of the last places in Thailand where the communist party and communist guerrillas, that was one of their main kind of holdouts. It sort of shrunk and shrunk and shrunk to that, and many of the different way how Thailand dealt with it was mostly through development. Like after the Americans left after the Vietnam War, and then Thailand started dealing with its own communist insurgency in their own way, and they did a lot of road building, schools, hospitals, and the communist movement started to fall apart because it was addressing many of the problems that were driving. It's not so much ideological as they weren't getting a fair deal out in the countryside, especially in the Northeast. And but then there was still a substantial number that were holed up in that. And that was one of the last developed areas in Thailand. So a lot of people died. So yeah.
To your point, Ajahn said the number of relics increased as they took it up to the jetty.
Oh, yeah.
But also I'm curious, is there a chant or a stock phrase for asking Devas permission to set up a glove or
really, a lot of it is. I mean, of course, what the most stock uh, one is the Metta Sutta. That is quite actually given by the Buddha to monks who were having some difficulty with the local devas, and originally the devas were kind of happy that the monks were there, but then they didn't leave. So then they tried to drive them out. But so then the Buddha said, you go back there, you spend the pansa, here's a chant. And it's the Karaniya Matta Sutta. So that's probably the most standard. But any way that one formulates loving kindness, sharing of blessings, those dedications, and as well as recollections of Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. That one is recollecting those both the formal aspect of Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, but then also such as virtue, such as concentration, such as understanding. That sense of here, this is what I'm up to. Yeah.
Kind of intention or relationship when dwelling outdoors, like it really creates, and like I try to cultivate this sense of like, there are other beings here,
Yeah.
like birds and deer and squirrels and devas, and I'm moving into their space.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if one didn't believe in any other world, you're still sort of encroaching on others' territory. And so but certainly that from a Buddhist perspective, and certainly from the Thai forest monastic perspective, that the other world is much more than what you can materially have contact with. Okay. This is specifically from the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. When the Blessed One had stayed at Kodhigama as long as he chose, he said to the Venerable Ananda, "Come, Ananda, let us go to Nadika." "Even so, Lord," the Venerable Ananda replied. Then the Blessed One journeyed to Nadika with a large community of bhikkhus. While there, he lived in the brick hall in Nadika. Then the Venerable Ananda went to the Blessed One. He said, "Lord, the bhikkhu named Saha died at Nadika. What was his destination? What was his rebirth?" The bhikkhuni named Nanda, the lay follower named Sudatta, the woman lay follower named Sujata, the lay followers named Kakuda and Kalinga and Nikita and Katisaba and Tutta and Santutta and Baddha and Subadha. These died at Nadika. What was their destination? What was their rebirth? The Bhikkhu Salaha Ananda, by realization himself, here and now entered upon and dwelt in the deliverance of mind, the deliverance by understanding that are taintless through exhaustion of taints. The Bhikkhuni Nanda, with the destruction of the 5 more immediate fetters, reappeared spontaneously elsewhere, there to attain Nibbana without ever returning from that world. The lay follower Sudatta, with the destruction of 3 fetters, and with the attenuation of lust, hate, and delusion, became a once returner, who will return to this world to make an end of suffering. The woman lay follower Sujata, with the destruction of 3 fetters, became a stream enterer, no more subject to perdition, certain of rightness, and destined to enlightenment. The lay followers Kukuddha, Kalinga, Nikita, Katisaba, Tutta, Santutta, Bhadda, and Subhadra, and also 50 lay followers all became non-returners. 90 lay followers became once returners. Over 500 lay followers became stream enterers. Now, it is natural for human beings to die. But if you come and ask this question each time one dies, it wearies the perfect one. So I shall give you an exposition of the Dhamma called the mirror of the Dhamma, possessed of which a noble disciple can predict for himself, there is no more hell for me, no more animal birth, no more ghost world, no more states of privation, unhappy destinations, or perdition. I am a stream enterer, no more subject to perdition. I am certain of rightness and destined to enlightenment. And what is the exposition of the Dhamma called the mirror of the Dhamma? Here, a noble disciple has absolute confidence in the Buddha. That blessed one is such since he is accomplished, fully enlightened, perfect in knowledge and conduct, sublime, the knower of worlds, the incomparable leader of men to be tamed, the teacher of gods and men, enlightened, blessed. He has absolute confidence in the Dhamma. The Dhamma is well proclaimed by the Blessed One. Its effect is visible here and now. It is timeless, not delayed. It invites inspection. It is onward leading, and it can be directly experienced by the wise. He has absolute confidence in the Sangha. The Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples has entered on the good way, has entered on the straight way, has entered on the true way, has entered on the proper way. That is to say, the 4 pairs of beings, the 8 types of persons, this Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples is fit for gifts, hospitality, offerings, and reverential salutation as an incomparable field of merit for the world. He is perfect in the virtues, beloved of noble ones, unbroken, untorn, unblotched, unmottled, emancipating, commended by the wise, not misapprehended, and conducive to concentration. This is the exposition of the Dhamma called the mirror of the Dhamma, possessing which a noble disciple can predict for himself, there is no more hell for me, and so on and so on. I am a stream enterer, no more subject to perdition. I am certain of rightness and destined to enlightenment. And while the Blessed One was living there at Nadika in the brick hall, he often gave this talk on the Dhamma to the bhikkhus. Such is virtue, such is concentration, such is understanding. Concentration fortified with virtue brings great benefits and great fruits. Understanding fortified with concentration brings great benefits and great fruits. The heart fortified with understanding becomes completely liberated from taints, from the taint of sensual desire, the taint of being, the taint of views, and the taint of ignorance. So that those 4 bases of the stream enterer are that is the most common way that the Buddha expresses the qualities of a stream enterer. I mean, there are others that are used, but that is certainly the most common. So the next section is, let's say, Mahaparinibbana Sutta, along with it's from a part of the Dika 22. When the Blessed One had stayed at Nadika as long as he chose, he said to the Venerable Ananda, "Come, Ananda, let us go to Vesali." "Even so, Lord," the Venerable Ananda replied. Then the Blessed One journeyed to Vesali with a large number of bhikkhus. While there, he lived in Ambapali's grove in Vesali. There he addressed the bhikkhus. "Bhikkhus, a bhikkhu should live mindful and fully aware. This is our instruction to you. And how should a bhikkhu live mindful? Here a bhikkhu abides contemplating the body as a body, ardent, fully aware, mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating feelings as feelings, ardent, fully aware, mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating consciousness as consciousness, ardent, fully aware, mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. He abides contemplating mental objects as mental objects, ardent, fully aware, mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. And how is a bhikkhu fully aware? Here a bhikkhu is fully aware in moving to and fro, in looking ahead and away, in flexing and extending the limbs, in wearing the outer patch cloak, the bowl and other robes, in eating, drinking, chewing, and tasting, in evacuating the bowels, in making water, in walking, standing, sitting, going to sleep, waking, talking, and keeping silent. A bhikkhu should live mindful and fully aware. This is our instruction to you. So as I said, and as it's abundantly clear, when the Buddha is he's reviewing the fundamentals of his teaching, and and so that the four foundations of mindfulness are central to the Buddha's way of practice, and it's also interesting that Nyanamoli translates it citta as consciousness. I hadn't remembered that, or didn't stick in my mind, and but also that the Buddha's, or the central aspect of the Buddha's teachings, the liberating essence of the Buddha's teaching, is implemented when one is moving to and fro, looking ahead and away, flexing and extending the limbs, drinking, chewing, tasting, evacuating above, making water, in walking, standing, in the ordinary aspects of life. Everything is a foundation for liberation. Everything is a foundation of practice and training. It's not some absolutely unique and special practice that one is doing, or some unique and special situation that one is in. But it is truly bringing this awareness and mindfulness, the clarity of being into everything that one's doing. Any questions, comments?
Earlier you were talking about how the practice of asking permission to go to a place, or to practice in a place, to dwell in a place, and dedicating merit, and those sort of things. And it reminded me that I've heard this teaching, I'm not sure where it's from, but somewhere in the canon, maybe the Dhammapada, but I think it says like, wherever the arhats dwell, that place will be peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds right. But I was wondering if you knew the context of that, or like, is it specifically kind of referring to just the effect that people, with a peaceful, free mind have on other people, or also say on other beings, devas, all?
I would think all of the above, in the sense that all of it is a conditioning factor, and also that, say, the choices that somebody who is fully realized, the choices that they make of who they end up associating with, the places that they gravitate to. There's a certain love of the peaceful, and even if it's not necessarily a seemingly ideal situation. I mean, certainly, say like it's really striking how, say like Wapapong as a physical place, like a place that you enter into, it's just really peaceful. And I don't think it's just me with my kind of history and associations, but I really feel there's something that's quite tangible, and even places where practice has been carried out in a sincere way. That has an effect somehow on the physical place. I've heard many people come who are not even Buddhists, just even coming to Abhayagiri and say, "Oh, it's just really peaceful. There's something here." I think there is an effect, and of course, one can go all woo-woo about it and make up all sorts of stories, but I think or over exaggerated, but I think there's something quite tangible, and then similarly, like for myself, like I have told the story many times of when I went to pay respects to Prapayuto for the first time. He is such an exemplary being, and just this fount of goodness. But the monastery that he was in was just this god-awful place in central Bangkok, and it was really right on between old, like really central Bangkok and Chinatown, and it was all around it. It was very dirty, and the street that you go into the temple was a street where, as happens in many Asian cities, I'm not sure, probably in old European cities as well, where whole streets will be one particular craft or but anyway, it seemed to be a whole street of repair shops, of transmissions, and so it was just car parts and oil everywhere. It was just dirty. And then you go into the monastery, and that was the last monastery that was in the whole of central Bangkok, that was a place for ordinary people to do cremations. So it was kind of a busy place, but it was really for ordinary people, ordinary citizens. So so the place was kind of chaotic and dirty, but in the back, where Prapayuta was, you should go in there, go up on this porch, and there's this island of peace. So yeah, I think there's something about that, and that say good practice, it affects